Hi guys, welcome to another session of Protractor. My name is Karanbir Singh. Let's have a quick recap of what we did in the last session. In the last session, we did all the basic installations like installing Node.js, installation of Protractor, and installing WebDriver Manager update. And this will be the prerequisite for today's session. So if you have not watched the session, I will add the link in the description. Please do watch the previous session, as in this session we will continue from where we left in the last session. Let's look at the topics that we are going to cover in this session. Though this series is going to be Protractor with Cucumber, but then I think we should also cover the default framework which is supported by Protractor, and that is Jasmine. So in this session, we are going to talk about the default framework supported by Protractor. We would also be installing an IDE, as we are yet to install one, and we would also be writing a first test script in Jasmine. So guys, before we start understanding Jasmine framework through code, let's understand it theoretically. In the first session, we explained that Protractor supports an end-to-end testing framework, and we had also explained what is an end-to-end framework. So guys, if you have not seen that session, I would be sharing the link of first session in the description. Please do watch to understand what is an end-to-end framework. So Jasmine is one of an end-to-end framework. Jasmine contains two types of block. One is the describe block and another is it block. Describe block denotes a test scenario and it block denotes a test case present in each test scenario. If you're struggling to understand this, you need not worry. This is what we are going to understand today. So guys, let's understand this from the code perspective also. In the last session, we had installed Protractor and we had opened Protractor, but we went into node modules to understand WebDriver Manager update. Let's look at the other folders present in there, right? So let me just open the folders. I'll go to C, I'll go to users, I'll open my user and I'll open. So guys, before that, please click on view, enable the hidden items, then only you'll be able to see app data. I'll just open app data. Under app data, I'll open roaming. In roaming, I'll open npm, then node modules, and then we'll open Protractor. So this is where guys, in the last session, we went further ahead to node modules, and then from node modules, we had opened WebDriver Manager update. But then for this time, we can see that we have another folder which says example. So guys, this is the default example which is given by Protractor to understand Jasmine framework, right? So we can see that we have two files here. One is conf file, another is example.spec file, example underscore spec file, right? So let's open each one of them one by one and understand what this file contains. So first, let's start with example underscore spec file. Let's open this with a notepad. Let's make it full screen and let's increase the font of the page. So in spec file contains a describe block, which means the test scenario, and this describe block contains an it block, which is the test case present in this test scenario. So guys, we can see that we have one describe block here, another describe block here. This describe block contains one it, whereas this describe block contains two its. So this means that this scenario has two test cases, and this scenario just has a one test case. So guys, in Jasmine, describe and it are the keywords which are already present in this framework, right? Let's also see the other file now. Then we have a config file, right? Which by the name tells us that we have configurations related to framework present in here. So let's open the conf file now. Let's open it with notepad. Let's do the same thing. Let's just increase the font size. Right, so here we can see that the first configuration that we have is direct connect true, which means that we do not need Selenium server to interact with the web browser driver. If we set direct connect to true, then we can directly interact from Protractor to the web drivers. Then we have capabilities where we write all the capabilities which are present for our web drivers to perform. So by this we mean that I want my test scripts to be executed in the Chrome browser. So we want our Protractor to interact with Chrome driver in this case, right? In the framework, we have mentioned Jasmine, which is the default framework offered by Protractor. Spec section contains list of all the spec files we want to execute. And we just saw that spec file is the test file or the script that we want to execute, right? So we had just recently opened the spec file where we had the describe block and the it block. So we tend to mention all the spec files here. Then we can see we have Jasmine node options, and these are the additional options passed on to Jasmine before the test. This is where we set the behavior of a test, such as timeouts and test color. So in this case, default timeout interval is set to 30,000 milliseconds, which means it will wait for 30,000 milliseconds before the test case is failed. Right. So guys, this is about understanding about the Jasmine framework. So let's move back here and let's move on to the installation of Visual Studio Code, which is our first IDE that we would be installing. So guys, IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment. This is used to set up the complete framework at a single place. That is, all the file, all the packages, the complete project at a single place. So some of the examples of IDE are Eclipse, we have Visual Studio Code, and we have many more. But for this project and for the upcoming projects that we would be using is Visual Studio Code. So let's install Visual Studio Code now. I'll quickly open Chrome. And in Chrome, I'll just search for Visual Studio Code. Here it is. As soon as I search, I get this link, and I can see that I get another link, which is to download Visual Studio Code. I'll just click on this link and I'm navigated to this page. So this has the installation available for Windows, for Linux, and for Mac. In Windows, you can further see you have an option as a user installer or a system installer. So this depends on the rights or permissions that you have for your system. I have the admin rights, so I'll be installing the system installer. Guys, if you're unaware about the operating system, then what you can do is you can open the folder. You can right click on this PC, select the properties. As soon as you select the properties, you can see here it says 64-bit operating system. That means I can install the 64-bit Visual Studio Code. So I'll just click on this link. The installation should start. Yes, so the installation has started. Let's just wait for a couple of seconds for this to get installed. And let's do this. Open when done. So let's wait for Visual Studio to open the installation. Okay, the first thing that we get is the license agreement. I'll just accept the license agreement, click on next. This is the location, looks good. Okay, so here we get the option to create a start menu folder or not. Well, you can select if you want, but I won't select. The additional icon, we can create the desktop icon if you want, or else you can just click on next. So guys, I already have Visual Studio Code. I will not install it, but then you just need to press the install button and it should be good to go to install. Right? So let's quickly open Visual Studio and let's see how it looks like if we open Visual Studio Code. So guys, after installation, as soon as you open the Visual Studio Code, this is how it will look like. This is what you'll get when you'll install the Visual Studio Code. So guys, the installation of an IDE, which was Visual Studio Code, is done, right? So guys, let's move on to the third and the final part of this session, which is let's create our own first test script in Protractor using Jasmine. So guys, let's create the first test script with the example which we saw earlier, right? So let's quickly open the folder and let's open the example, the Protractor example that we saw earlier once again. So I'll again navigate to users, then to current beer, then I'll open app data, roaming. Okay, under roaming, I'll open npm, then node modules, then I'll open Protractor, and then I'll open example. So we have earlier discussed about config file and spec file. Guys, let's also execute this file and see what happens if we execute this file. So I'll just in the search bar write cmd and it will open command prompt with the directory already up till examples. So to execute this, we need to write the keyword as Protractor and then conf, as conf is the file that is used to execute this script. So let's hit enter and let's see what happens. Okay, so Chrome has been opened. It is navigating to some website. Okay, it entered Julie. It is performing the next step, I guess now. Write your Protractor script and done. So we can see that it executed 3 specs, and if you remember guys, in example spec we had 3 it blocks, right? So it executed all the 3 it blocks and gave us the result that it took 14 seconds for the Protractor to execute this script. So now guys, let's open the same script using the IDE that we had just installed. So I'll quickly open IDE. I'll click on file, I'll click on open folder, and I'll quickly click on C drive, users, then from users I'll open current beer, then I'll open app data, roaming, then npm, then node modules, from node modules to Protractor, and I'll select example, select folder. So guys, I've increased the font size of Visual Studio so that you can see everything clearly. Let's open the conf file again. So this is the conf file that we had talked earlier, right? And this is the spec file for which we had talked earlier as well. So guys, just one thing which I forgot to tell you earlier, that default timeout interval, we talked about this also, but then this is the maximum time that it would wait. So 30 seconds is the maximum time it will wait before the test script is failed. Right, so let's start writing our own first test script, and I'll just add a file here with the name same as below, but then I'll just make it example1.js. Right, so this is a complete blank file, and guys, we also need an Angular app. So I'll just open a new tab, close the previous one, and I'll search for Protractor demo application, and I will hit enter, and the first link that you will get is protractortest.org. So let's open this, and if you scroll down a bit, it gives you a sample test that navigates to an example AngularJS application, right? So I'll just click on this and I can see that I'm navigated to an application. Now, how can we verify if this is an Angular application, guys? If you remember, we had talked about this in the first session. Let's inspect the DOM. If I inspect the DOM, I can see, let me just select any element. Okay, so as we did, we can see that there are many ng tags available. So this is how we get to know that this is an Angular application, right? So let's just automate this app now in Jasmine framework. So guys, we talked about describe block. That describe block is the test scenario, and it block is the test case which is present in the describe block. So we'll start with the describe block. So I'll quickly write here describe. And this is an end-to-end framework. So we'll also explain, or we'll also try to write the name of the scenario that we are going to test. So let's say I am testing calculator, right? Then I'll put a comma. I'll use the keyword, which is a function. Function is the keyword here, and we'll put the braces. Now in this describe block, we need to enter a test case. So I'll quickly create an it block in this. Okay, so I triggered something else. Let's do it again. I'll do it and I'll add the brackets. Okay, I don't know why it is doing this. Again, let's try it one more time. Okay, so we added an it block. Let's also give it a name. So we'll be doing addition, and let's write the keyword function here, and let's again put the braces. So guys, this is JavaScript. We should be writing semicolons at the end. This denotes that this is the end of the statement, right? So we have created the basic structure, we can say, of this, where we have described a describe block, which is the test scenario, and we have entered an if block, which is the test case that we are going to write. So now let's go back to the application. Let me just zoom this in for you. Okay, so here we have two input fields and we have one button. So let's select this input field. We can see that it has ng model first. So guys, the biggest advantage of Protractor is that we can use the ng tags. So if I go back here, I can see I have ng model, I have ng model, I have ng click. So the biggest advantage that Protractor gives me is that I can use these ng tags as a locator. Let's see how we can do it. So the syntax is I'll start writing element, then I'll add a bracket. Okay, so it changed, and I'll write by dot, you can say model, and under model, let's just check it once again. It was first, so I can write first, and then I can use a function which is send keys. So guys, send keys is used to send data. Don't worry if you're not aware about this. We'll talk about this in detail in upcoming session. But for now, the basic knowledge that we need is send keys is used to enter any data that we want to enter. So let's enter 10. This is the first value that we have entered. Now similarly, we have ng model with second, which is the second input value that we need to enter. So let's add here element by dot model, and let's write second here. Let's keep the symmetry and let's add second here, and in I'll do send keys. I got the option, and I'll do, let's say 5. So guys, in this first input box I am entering 10, then in the second input box I am entering 5. So at last we have the go button that we need to click. So let's just do it here, and for this one let's create an XPath, right? By dot XPath. Don't worry guys, if you are unaware of how to create the XPaths, we would also be covering this in the upcoming session. But then it says ID go button, and the tag is button. So let's just cross check it once. Perfect. And guys, like send keys, we also have another function which is click. Now click is used to click on any element. Now this is a button and I can click on this, right? So we can use a click function, right? Then we have this class which says ng binding, where you can see that we are getting the outcome. Let's try and enter something and check whether we get the outcome here or not. Yes. So in the class ng binding, we are getting the result, right? So let's trap this result. So guys, whenever we write any it block, it is always recommended to have some sorts of assertion to verify if the test scenario is working fine or not. And if we talk about the assertions which are present in Jasmine, we have an expect statement where expect has two parameters, that is actual result and the expected result, right? So actual result is what you got on the UI, and then we use to equal and we mention the expected outcome. Like in this case, we are expecting it to be 15. So that is what I'll mention here. And in expect, what we will do is we'll try and fetch the outcome from here. So what we can do here is I can say element by dot xpath is what I will use again. Right, let's go back here, and it has an h2 tag. So let's put the h2 tag. Okay, so let's put the h2 tag and also do @class is equals to, if I remember, the class is ng binding. Let's just check it once. So yes, it is ng binding. So what I'll do is I'll say get me the text from here. So get text is a function. So I tell it to get me, okay, so one bracket got added. So I tell the system to get me the result from this text, from this attribute, and make it equal to 15. If this is working fine, then it will get passed, else it will give me an exception. So let's just try and run it once. I'll quickly open the config file, and here let's change it to example1, because that is what we want to run. So we forgot something to mention. Let's just go back to example number 1 and see. And guys, you can see that I forgot to mention the URL where I want these actions to be performed. So let's quickly just add that URL. So I'll write, let's try one more time, browser dot get is that I'll use, and I'll enter the double quotes. So let's go to the application, copy the URL, and let's paste it here. Right, so guys, let's now try and execute it and see what happens. So I'll just run the same command as I had run it earlier, protractor conf. Let's hit this command and see what happens. Okay, so browser got opened. We got navigated to the right application. It entered everything. The actual result and the expected results were same. That is why we got a success. As you can see, this one dot, this dot means one spec got executed, and it's the same written here, that one spec got executed, 0 failures. Right. So guys, this is how we created our first application, or we can say the first project that we automated in Protractor using JavaScript and Jasmine framework. And don't worry guys, if you were unable to understand this function, which is send keys or dot click or expect statement, if you were not able to understand it, that is completely okay, because this is what we are going to discuss in a lot more detail in the upcoming sessions. Don't worry, we'll cover them all in the subsequent sessions that we are going to do. But then this is how we create a basic application to test any Angular application. So this is it for today's session, guys. Thank you so much, and I hope this was a fruitful session.